Well, I am so delighted to be here with you, Bill. And for all the people that are watching that have not met Bill Hill, I just can't say enough words. He's been with the Colorado Symphony for over 40 years, conducting for over 15 with the Evergreen.
12 with
12.
Evergreen, but I even years and years ago conducted some of my pieces with the Colorado Symphony.
Yes.
Occasionally.
Yeah, occasionally. And composed this amazing piece, the Rhapsody for Piano and Orchestra, which is going to be premiered April 20th and 21st. So I'm just so glad we have time to talk. And
Yes.
before this, we were talking minutia about dynamics and accents, and it's such a gift for me to be able to talk to you about everything you've written for me to play. And I just kind of wanted to start by asking you, what was your initial feeling and scope of this piece when you thought of writing a new piano concerto?
Well, I've never written a piano concerto. I've written piano sonatas and various smaller pieces for piano. And you might recall, we were sitting in a restaurant with James and talking about me writing a piano concerto for you. And I know your amazing work as a teacher and a performer. And so one of the first things I said, first thing that came to mind was, do you play stride piano?
That's right.
And
that's
you
right.
said your dad had you play stride piano as
Yep.
a young player. And my next question, it was very leading. My next question was, well, how do you feel about stride piano meets Igor Stravinsky?
Exactly. I remember that too.
Because I don't know why, just knowing your, not just your wonderful playing, but your attitude toward music of let's try things, you
Yes,
know.
absolutely.
And I try something new every single piece I write,
Yes.
whether it's for my fusion band or the Colorado Symphony or the Evergreen Chamber Orchestra or for Jamie Shaak.
Thank you.
I always want to do something new because that's how we all grow as musicians.
Yeah.
And so that was my first sort of inspiration, knowing how open you are to wonderful new sounds and things. And then everybody loves stride piano.
Yeah.
It's so technically difficult to play well.
Yeah.
And then usually it's major and minor keys.
Yes.
And so then if you add some Stravinsky edgy harmonies into it, and melodic material that goes with those edgy harmonies, you get a new sound.
Oh, and it is. There's so many new sounds in here.
And
Yeah.
I just, from hearing you play it, it's just so cool and fantastic. I'm really, really looking forward to the rehearsals and the concerts.
Yes. Well, I've had such a good time rehearsing it, practicing, and just widening my scope too as a pianist, and so many harmonic and melodic patterns that are just new to my ear, and my brain is really firing up. So I can't thank you enough. I wanted to ask you, when writing for the Evergreen Chamber Orchestra, which is smaller than Colorado Symphony, what do you keep in mind? What are some of your factors?
Really, excuse me, really just the size of the orchestra. The Evergreen Chamber Orchestra is really, really good, and they can play beautifully. We have a good amount of rehearsals, but and we work very hard in those rehearsals. But mostly I'm just thinking, okay, this is a smaller strings, these are smaller string sections, pairs of the winds for the most part. A lot of the pieces I've written for Evergreen, and I've written quite a few, I do add, a chamber orchestra would be pairs of all the winds and the strings and just timpani, a standard chamber orchestra. And I tend to add percussion for that color and a couple of trombones. For this piece, largely because of the stride, but also some of the other more sort of neo-impressionist sections. I also added, in addition to the two trombones, I added tuba, because having that on the bottom for the stride sections, it's like 1920s, 1930s jazz a little bit related to that, but stride is more like 40s and 50s when it started. But really, I'm just thinking the different size of the orchestra. People don't always realize today that Beethoven symphonies, certainly Mozart, Haydn, even Mendelssohn, we get into the Romantic era, the mid 1800s, and still a lot of the orchestras had 6 first violins and 6 or 5
Right, they weren't
seconds.
as large as ours.
They weren't,
Right.
the
Anywhere.
25, 28 violin, 30 violins that we have now on stage.
Right.
And of course, they didn't play in concert halls the size that we play in now, say with the Colorado Symphony. But in many ways, I prefer the smaller churches where if we totally filled it, there'd be 300 people there,
Right.
you know.
Right.
And the intimacy of, particularly of acoustic music that's not amplified, it's just I don't know, it's very preferable to me. I've always, even with my jazz Latin fusion group, I would much rather play in a club that seats 150 to 200 people than a big arena, because, in the big arenas, there's certainly a place for that music for Taylor Swift or
Yes.
whomever, but you can't play really complex music in those big arenas.
No.
You sort of have to have a wall of sound. And the little intricate, really fast, really technical things just don't work
Right.
when you're trying to play to 60,000 people or something.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not putting that down. It's just a different way of looking at music.
Now, a little bit off topic, but what's your favorite hall that you've ever played in where you felt the sound right around you and kind of could control it?
Well, for many, many years I played the Grand Teton Music Festival, and that's a 90-piece orchestra, hand-picked from the top orchestras in the country.
Yeah.
And even that size of an orchestra, the hall only seats about 700 people. And it is acoustically amazing to get that kind of, nothing is amplified.
Right.
And the sound of the orchestra in that small of a hall is just phenomenal. And not just because the big sounds fill up the hall, but super soft sounds are so, Mahler and Strauss and a lot of the composers that wrote for 90, 100 players, one of their best things is to write pianissimo for 100 players.
Right. How does?
And that sound is just so amazing.
Right. Right. Oh, that I've never been there, so I'll have to put that on my list for sure.
Yeah, it's a really cool concert hall.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, back to the Rhapsody. So, for this piece, since it's so much is for the piano, did you write at the piano or did you compose? Where do you compose? Where do you find works for you?
I compose at a writing desk.
Okay.
I have a big drafting table, and right beside it is a really funky old Baldwin Acrosonic small piano. I mostly, I'd say half and half. I compose in my head, but then I use the piano a lot to check voicings, and of course for piano piece to check the reaches, and again, for the voicings, like the opening of this piece is dramatic and sort of neo-impressionistic, and the harmonies are related to, say, Debussy and Ravel, but they're not quite the same.
Right.
They're a little edgier, a little almost jazzy, but not really jazzy either. And those kind of voicings, both for the piano and the orchestra, I choose very carefully, and I go back and I play every single chord for the orchestra or the piano at the piano, so that I'm hearing, I think those voicings are a little too tight, low in the chord. I voice a lot based on the physics of sound, and that is, as the higher we get, the closer the harmonics are together, the faster the vibrations. And so, particularly when I want that sound, I spread the lower voicings octave or octave and a fifth or octave and a tenth, as you've seen.
Yes,
quite a bit.
exactly.
And then voice tighter in the upper range.
Yes.
And sometimes you want to avoid that, there's a little humor in this piece
Yes,
with
exactly.
two particular Stravinsky quotes, the most famous chord from the Rite of Spring, and probably the most famous chord from Petrushka.
Yes.
The Rite of Spring is actually an E major chord against an E flat dominant seventh, played exactly together. All triads and seventh chords, but a half step apart,
Yeah, beautiful.
played an octave apart. And the Petrushka is an F sharp major right on top of a C major, right over against us as she's demonstrating. And I just put those in because Stravinsky influences the stride sections in the piece and a couple other sections. I just thought, I'm just going to stick right in the audience and everybody's ear. We're just going to
just play it.
Yeah,
I should
yeah.
play it anyway so you can hear. Because I think it's so, it is so recognizable. That was a good moment here. Let's see. Well, the one I was going to play had it in it too.
The first stride section.
Yeah, the first stride has it. There it is.
Yep.
Is this just... Right?
Yep, that's the Petrushka chord,
That's the
and you want to play
Petrushka
the Rite of Spring? Yep, there you go.
There they are, right there.
The darkness of the Rite of Spring and the flash of Petrushka.
Exactly. Well, maybe I should play a little of the opening.
Sure,
Since we're talking about
sure.
that, this neo-impressionistic with these beautiful open chords. Also the fourths. You have a lot of wonderful stacked fourths.
Yes, and the lower part of those chords will be traditional third chords.
Yeah.
You know, like a fifth and then a tenth.
The
yeah.
tenth, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I love to mix more modern chords with impressionistic
With impression, yeah.
chords. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Bravo.
Thank you.
Would you just
Yeah.
show them again?
Yeah.
This is really pure impressionist writing. It's called a whole tone scale, so there are no half steps in the scale.
Oh,
Would
yes.
you just play the sixes again? And she's playing two groups of six against five in the part of this, but you can hear.
Right here.
Yeah,
Yes.
hear this.
Here that, yeah.
Very Debussy Ravel.
With those whole, yeah, and then it has a double whole tone thirds.
Right,
Which,
right.
yeah.
right back to Impressionism, but not the whole tone scale.
Yes,
more
back to the-
major seventh
right.
chords. And, yeah.
Mm-hmm. The other thing we were talking about is how much you love Bach, and
Yes.
you have some techniques of Bach in here.
Absolutely.
Tell me a little bit more about when you play Bach, or when you've kind of how he's influenced you.
I've just always been astounded by the counterpoint of Bach.
Yeah.
I was lucky for about 20 years. I, at the University of Denver, taught the advanced counterpoint, tonal counterpoint.
Yes.
Of course, I've taught modern counterpoint also, but, and the advanced tonal counterpoint, students that took the course, a lot of them were afraid of the course.
I'm sure. Advanced counterpoint, yeah.
But mostly grad students seem to really love it. I taught it, to me, you learn by doing. And I taught it as if it was a composition class.
Yeah.
So in the semester, the students did some exercises in counterpoint from basic to really more advanced exercises. Kent Kinnon wrote a really fantastic counterpoint book.
Yes.
So we did some of the exercises, but the main part of the class was 4 composition projects.
Okay.
And they didn't need to be the size of a Bach fugue or something.
Right.
But, so they did a little 2-part piece like the Notebook of Anna Magdalena, which is just beautiful, simple counterpoint, but it has always little key changes and beautiful, and it follows forms that are, the students need to know those forms. And then the second project was a full-blown 2-part invention.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And then a 3-part invention, and then a 4-voice fugue, all in one semester.
Wow. That's how you learn. Yeah, that's how you learn.
But you learn by doing, not just by studying. And of course, we analyzed a lot of Bach.
Yeah.
And it's funny, you learn to play the inventions, and it sort of becomes muscle memory in addition to the intellectual memory.
Yes.
And so I kind of had to relearn the fugues and the 2- and 3-part inventions, so I could play them very slowly and stop and say, okay, look at what Bach did here.
And then start up again.
Yeah, and then start up again. So it's a totally different way of playing the pieces.
Yes.
But
yes.
I love doing that. And in this piece, I've used mostly with diminished scale. That's a more modern scale. Actually goes back 100 years or so to Debussy. A lot of jazz players know the diminished scale. It's just a series of half and whole steps. So there are actually 8 notes in the scale till you get to the octave, rather than 7 in our major and minor scales.
And this is the first time I've ever played a diminished scale in my whole life.
That's really wild.
Yeah, which is crazy. So I've enjoyed learning that scale too.
Yeah, I love them. The diminished scales, there are only actually 3 of them, and then the transposition reverts to the same notes, starts on a different note, but it's the same pattern. So they're really, really cool, fun, symmetric scales to use. And so I wrote, this is my craziness, and Jamie has, she's laughing because it's that crazy.
Yes.
So I wrote a 2-part invention within the diminished scale.
Yes, all right,
So,
here we go.
yes. You'll listen, the left hand and right hand after 2 measures will just switch functions. So the right hand plays the faster notes, the left hand the slower, and then after 2 measures, it's called invertible counterpoint. They're playing exactly the same notes, but it's inverted. Would you just show like 2 bars of the D minor invention so they can see?
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Which is? Oh yeah.
So you hear the same da 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 is repeated.
And left hand, right.
And then the right hand plays it again up an octave, and so you will hear this now in a modern piece in the diminished scale.
That's right. That's right.
And just as in the Bach, almost never do both hands play 16th notes together. One hand plays half as fast and the other hand plays twice as fast, and then they change functions.
And the other thing that's similar is the 16th notes are legato and the 8th notes are staccato.
Yep.
That's very true to Bach also.
Yes, very much Bach invention, so that the faster notes are actually played legato and the shorter notes are played more staccato.
Exactly. Oh, I love that section.
Would you, just to demonstrate, would you play just the first two bars, just the right hand?
Yes.
And then stop and play just the left hand without the other parts, so they can hear that it's exactly the same. Yeah. So it's just switching the function of the hands.
That's right. And just today we were talking about this section. I had added a bit of a rest, and so I was trying to take that rest out, and it changes the whole concept. But this is the beauty of being able to talk to the composer in real time, and for you to make comments. It's so helpful. It's so helpful. Okay, so should we do a little bit of the stride?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Excellent.
There's a lyrical section that happens right before the stride, so I'll start there.
Great.
Okay?
Great.
Now, the stride, by the way, the stride gets faster and faster throughout the piece.
Yes.
So it will be even faster at the end. But here we go. So fun to play. So fun.
You can definitely hear the little Stravinsky quote. Would you play just like the first
Yes.
3 bars?
Yes,
And
okay,
so
good.
the third measure, you'll hear the Stravinsky quote come back in, and then we're right back to the jazzy. Have to have a little silliness, you know. You can't take this
Absolutely.
classical music too seriously.
Exactly.
That sounds fantastic.
Oh, it's so wonderful to get to play it and learn it alongside of you. So thank you so much. Thank you. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I have loved this project right from when we first started talking about it.
Oh, great. Well, we hope you can join us April 20th and 21st. Check out Evergreen Chamber Orchestra website. Thank you.
Thank you.